Cloud computing is the present and is the future. Cloud computing is the on-demand delivery of IT resources over the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. Just like your electricity on demand, whenever you need it, you switch it on, use it, and then turn it off. You just pay for the amount used. AWS is one such cloud provider and the largest one. There are other cloud providers too, but in this video, we are going to have a quick overview of what services AWS provide in terms of on-demand IT resources. So let's begin. On the screen, you can see that I have divided these AWS services into various components like global infrastructure at the bottom, then we have networking on top of it, then we have compute and storage. Afterwards, at the top layer, we have application services, analytics, databases, and on the right hand side, we have services related to security and operations. Let's review them one by one quickly. And I will start from the bottom left. AWS regions are physical locations around the world where AWS clusters data centers for application and service delivery in AWS availability zones. Availability zones are distinct locations within an AWS region that are engineered to be isolated from failures in other availability zones. Now, what is edge location? Edge location is a physical site that CloudFront, which is another AWS service, uses to cache copies of your content for faster delivery to the users at any location. Now let's see what are the networking services offered by AWS, and I will start from the left. First one is Route 53 DNS. AWS Route 53 is a highly available and scalable domain name system or DNS system. Route 53 connects user requests to internet applications running on AWS. Then we have Internet Gateway. Internet Gateway allows both inbound and outbound access to the internet, whereas the NAT Gateway, which is another service, that allows only outbound access. Then we have Elastic Load Balancer or ELB. ELB is a fully managed load balancing service that automatically distributes incoming application traffic to multiple targets and virtual appliances across AWS and on-premise resources. One of the most important concepts in networking is VPC or Virtual Private Cloud. It is a service that lets you launch AWS resources in a logically isolated virtual network that you define. Then we have Direct Connect. AWS Direct Connect makes it easy to establish a dedicated connection from an on-premise network to one or more VPCs in the same region in your AWS account. Then we have two concepts, Virtual Private Gateway and Customer Gateway. Virtual Private Gateway is a VPN endpoint on the Amazon side of your site-to-site VPN connection that can be attached to a single VPC. Whereas Customer Gateway is a resource that you create in AWS that represents the customer gateway device on your on-prem network. So in a VPN, the endpoint at AWS side is called as Virtual Private Gateway or VPG, and on the on-prem side, it is called as Customer Gateway. Now let's move on to the compute side of things. Elastic IP. Elastic IP addresses the static public IP version 4 address associated with your AWS account in a specific region. Unlike an auto-assigned public IP address, an elastic IP address is preserved after you stop and start your instance in a VPC. Then we have EC2 instance. EC2 instance is simply a virtual machine in AWS terminology. Auto-scaling. An auto-scaling monitors your application and automatically adjusts capacity to maintain steady and predictable performance at the lowest possible cost. AMI is a master image for the creation of virtual servers or virtual machines known as EC2 instance. AWS Lambda is a compute service that lets you run your code without provisioning any on managing any servers. So you just throw in your code and AWS runs it for you. It is also called as serverless. AWS EBS is Amazon's block level storage solution used with the EC2 cloud service to store persistent data. You can just think of it as a disk. Even if you shut down the EC2 instance, the data is persistent on that EBS volume or disk. And these all services are storage side of things. Then we have S3. AWS S3 is an object storage service that stores data as an object within the buckets. And an object is simply a file. Then we have EFS or Elastic File System. AWS EFS provides serverless, fully elastic file storage so that you can share your file data among different virtual machines or services. Then we have Glacier. Glacier is a secure, durable service for low cost data archiving and long term backup. CloudFront, as we just saw with the edge location in the first section, CloudFront is a web service that speeds up distribution of your static and dynamic web content. Then we have Storage Gateway. Storage Gateway is used to simplify storage management and reduce cost for key hybrid cloud storage use cases. These include moving backups to the cloud using on-prem file shares backed up by cloud storage. AWS Import Export is a data transport service to move large amount of data into and out of AWS public cloud using portable storage devices for transport. And there are two versions of it. One is called as import disk and the other one is Snowball. Now let's move on to the top layer application services. Elastic Transcoder is a media transcoding in the cloud. It is a way for developers and businesses to convert or transcode, in other words, media files from their source format into versions that will play back on devices like smartphones, tablets, and PCs. Then we have SNS, which is Simple Notification Service. It is a managed service again that provides message delivery from publisher to subscribers. SES is for email, and it's a managed email service from AWS. Then we have SQS. It is a message queuing services. It exchanges and stores messages between software components in AWS. AWS Data Pipeline is a web service that helps you reliably process and move data between different AWS compute and storage services as well as on-prem. Next, for the analytics, the most common service is Elastic MapReduce or EMR. It is a managed cluster platform that simplifies running big data frameworks such as Apache Hadoop and Spark on AWS to process and analyze vast amount of data. In the database section, we have four common services. Elastic Cache is a cache as service developed and distributed by AWS. It is a Redis and Memcached compatible service. RDS is a managed relational database service where you can create your Oracle, SQL Server, MySQL, Postgres databases, but you don't have to manage any operating system or underlying hardware because AWS takes care of it. And same with the Redshift, which is a managed data warehouse by AWS. DynamoDB is a NoSQL offering from AWS and it is very scalable. If you look at the security services, we have AWS managed encryption keys, which is called as KMS, which you can use for your own application or for any of your AWS EBS volumes or other services. For identity and for authorization and authentication, we have IAM. For directory services, to connect your on-prem directory services like Microsoft AD with your AWS, you can use directory services. CloudTrail is used to log all the API calls made in the AWS, and this is used for audit trail. Trusted Advisor provides recommendations that help you follow AWS best practices, and it works on the basis of AWS pillars. On the very right section, we have some services related to operations. For example, we have CloudFormation, which is used as infrastructure as code. You define your infrastructure as code and then deploy it. Code deploy is related to DevOps side of things where you have various other services like code pipeline, code commit, where you can build your repositories and then code deploy builds the artifact and then that gets deployed into various environments by using code pipeline. AWS console where you do the click ops to handle different AWS services. For monitoring side of things, rules and stuff, we have CloudWatch monitoring and it has evolved a lot. AWS Config Management provides a detailed view of the configuration of AWS resources in your AWS cloud and very handy service. AWS Ops Work is a configuration managed service that provides managed instances of Chef and Puppet. AWS Elastic Beanstalk is a platform in within AWS to easily deploy your application. You just simply upload your code and Elastic Beanstalk does the rest. I hope this was useful. If you have any questions or feedback, please put them in the comments. Thank you.